Hey everybody, it's Daniel, Tafo, and I wanted to do a Yahoo Melee Science intro, but I'm lazy. Anyway, Smash Summit 6 indirectly announced that they're going to have another event, which shouldn't be a surprise to you guys. But they made an interesting announcement by partnering with Full Bloom 4. And by that, I mean that the top two non invited players will get their chance to compete in Smash Summit 6. We've seen this before where Smash Summit has partnered with tournaments in the past. We saw this with last Smash Summit 5, where I forget, at least for GTX, they partnered with Smash Summit. And there was like one more tournament where, Big House 7. That's right. So they partnered with Big House 7 and GTX in terms of whoever the highest placing non-invited player was. Ooh, that's a mouthful. We just said, hey, you're invited to the summit. And I like the meritocracy here because going through the gauntlet of campaigning is stressful. So at the very least, we allow two people who are on the fringe of top 10 to say, hey, you know what? If you're good enough, you can play for a spot. And of course, they invite players every time and they reduce the number. They usually invite 10, but now it's 8 plus 2 people who qualify plus 6 people who campaign, which is pretty cool all in all. Now, with that being said, I do believe Mango actually has tight lips. So if you ever have a secret with Mango, you can trust that he's not going to tell anyone because Mango hasn't even told me the date of Smash Summit 6. But if we're to imagine who the people that are already invited were to this event, well, my grammar's really weird. Anyway, the invited players, if we're to speculate, are most likely a combination of Hungrybox, Armada, Mango, Mutaking, Plup, and Leffen. And if we're to speculate on the two other slots, because I think 8 people in total are invited, it's most likely some combination of Axe, Wizrobe, and SFAT, and I'm more likely to lean towards Axe and Wizrobe, who I think are slightly ahead of SFAT in terms of placings and results. However, just because of former precedent, we saw PPU get invited over Shroomed, so maybe Smash Summit invites SFAT for doubles or something else. So it's going to be very interesting to see who the 7th and 8th people that were invited to the Smash Summit. I'm very excited for Smash Summit because, the themes were great. I really loved that they did the anime theme last time. I think it worked really well. And of course, they can't really use the anime theme again this time. So I'm kind of interested to see what kind of theme they come up with this time. But between Hotbit and Slime, I think they do a fantastic job with content. So I trust that they're going to have a really awesome theme for this upcoming summit. So Full Bloom, which is coming up in the Midwest, gets a lot more of a boost just because they are the one tournament that's going to offer summit slots. So I imagine a lot of the people who are on the fringe of going to Full Bloom are now okay, shoot, I should go. Because the value of a Smash Summit slot is huge, because if you go through the route of trying to get votes to get in, your fan base probably has to pay I don't even know what the number is, but $20,000 to $30,000 to get you in. I don't remember the numbers, but it's probably somewhere around that ballpark. And if you could just get in rather than stress yourself out through the campaign process, then you should go for it. So Full Bloom's a grassroots event, so they don't really have a big prize pot, but the 2 Smash Summit slots are going to be worth a ton of money in terms of what you get out of that. So it's kind of funny that with the Smash Summit, the person who gets first place at this event may get less value than the person who gets into the summit, because that value of getting to the summit's huge. So it's pretty interesting. So if we were to speculate, there's at least 2 people who are attending Full Bloom that have been invited. So both HBox and Leffen. And so it's going to be really interesting from a bracket standpoint on who qualifies into this event. So if we speculate that SFAT's not going to be able to get in, then there's only 2 people who are guaranteed to get in, and then you have a sea of people who are really strong and talented that could also get in. So we have SFAT, Chu, S2J, Shroom, Swedish Duck, Crush, PPU, AMSA, Mike Hayes, Lod, KGH, and then some other players like Rishi, Hax, Bladewise, Ginger, and Kells. So there's going to be a lot of people fighting for that slot. And so if we're to look at this, I think what's really going to be difficult, if I were in Full Bloom and looking at the bracket, I would not pick anybody who is seeded 7 through 10. because there's just such a huge difficulty curve to get in from that slot. The reason why I say this is because the first two slots are Hungrybox and Leffen, and no offense to SFAT, but SFAT is a significant skill drop compared to Leffen. So if you look at a bracket, the first seeded player, Hungrybox, plays the winner of the 8 and 9 seed if seeds play out, and Leffen will play the winner of the 7th seed versus 10th seed match to get to winner's quarters. So anyone who's seeded from 7 to 10 unfortunately has a very difficult path, because if they lose in winner's quarters, then they're going to have to make quite a loser's run to get through. So that's no bueno. So in this particular tournament, it's strange, but being the 11th or 12th seed is actually better than being anywhere from the 7th to 10th seed, just for those reasons alone. So if you're kind of trying to make a prediction here, I would best avoid picking anyone in that 7 to 10 range because of the fact they have to play Leffen and Hungrybox so early. Now, with that being said, it's really hard to predict how this bracket's going to play out. If you were to go strictly by rank, then SFAT and S2J have a very good chance of getting in. But a lot of people are like, well, what about Chu? And I'm a little bit nervous about Chu because I think Chu's peaks are really high in that he can beat, he can beat Mewtwo, he can beat Mango, and he can potentially beat Leffen. But in these type of fields where you have a lot of these like top 25 level players, like I feel like Chu's also very prone to getting upset by somebody randomly in like the winner's round of 16. We've seen this at Genesis, and we see this at tournaments where either Chu does really well, like we've seen when he beats Mewtwo at Battle of BC, or he just does really poorly. So it's really hard to gamble or pick Chu in this particular bracket, just with the fact that there's so many like random Ice Climbers Slayers that can just come out of the blue and just eliminate him. No disrespect to Chu, but just because of like the nature of Ice Climbers, they're very likely they're the most likely character that can upset somebody better than them, but they're also one of the most likely characters that can get upset by somebody that's quote unquote ranked lower than them. And when I look at this field, I'm like pretty nervous. I mean, if I were betting on this field, I wouldn't know who to pick to win. As far as like the strongest player going into this event, I honestly think that despite the fact that so I think SFAT's probably the best in this field that isn't already invited. I'm going to assume he isn't. But other than that, I think Crush is really strong here. I think he has pretty good matchups against Chu, SJ, Shroom, Swedish. Pretty much most people here except for maybe Duck. I think he's more than capable of beating everybody on this list. So if there's anybody like you want to bet money on, I think Crush is pretty high up there. And I think based on recent performances, Crush is going to get a pretty good seed. You can fairly seed him like anywhere from like 3 to 6. I think 3 might be a little high actually, but you can put him 4, 5, or 6. And as long as he doesn't get seeded 7th, I think he has a very good chance of getting in. Now, there's a lot of players like I'm a little bit bullish on. Like, I haven't really seen Shroom practice much lately, and he tends to be lazy during this time of year, so it's really hard for me to really pick him. Swedish Delight's been slacking lately, and I don't know if he's going to sandbag. Maybe he tries really hard because it's a summit slot, but I'm not very confident in Swedish's recent performances lately, and we never really saw his potential lately. I guess another strong candidate I have here is Duck. Though there are some character matchups here that I'm a little bit worried about. I think that there's a strong potential he could run into SJ, Shroomed, or Swedish. And I think those 3 have very strong matchups in this particular bracket against Duck. So it's going to be really tough for him, and I think Duck's going to have to avoid some of the tougher matchups, whereas in other tournaments we tend to see Duck, we see if Duck is in like a Fox or Falco heavy pool, then Duck can just get by because he can play a bunch of Foxes in a row that aren't particularly strong in the matchup. But he's going to have to play a couple of Sheiks and Falcons to make it in. It's not to say that it's like impossible for him, but if he let's say runs into one of them in like losers quarters, he runs into SCJ or Shroom, that might be the end of his run. Another strong candidate I'm really buying on is Amsa, and I'd even buy high on him because I just think that he's just such a good player, and despite the fact that he doesn't enter many events, he always outperforms his seed. When I look at this bracket here, I just think that there might be some matchups he might struggle with. Once again, SGA, Shroomed, and Swedish might be tough for him. But needless to say, he's working with a coach, and he's improved so much in the Falcon matchup that maybe he takes a set off of SGA this time. Shroomed and Swedish are probably going to be a struggle for him. I imagine Swedish, just abuses low tiers. And I think Crush would be an interesting match. I also think that Laud and Rishi, and in particular Laud here, would give Amsa a little bit of a hard time because Laud has some Yoshi experience playing against, I believe, Peanut Phobia. As far as Dark Horse candidates go, I'm not really sold on anybody. I mean, I know some people might mention, well, does Hax have a good chance of making it? And frankly, I think his chances are very low. And this isn't really to disrespect Hax. I just think that I don't really see a world where Hax gets third in this bracket. I just really don't see that happening. So for the look here, I think that at the bare minimum, you probably will have to get fourth to get full bloom slot unless HBox or Leffen finish in fifth or worse, which I don't really foresee happening. I feel like unless Leffen trolls or HBox plays secondaries, I really do believe that Honeybox and Leffen are both going to be playing hard, and because there aren't too many melee tournaments going on lately, that I think that's going to be the very likely grand final scenario. So pretty much whoever finishes third and fourth, I believe, are going to finish and get those coveted Smash Summit slots. So those are my thoughts on full bloom, and I believe Smash Summit. Ooh, I almost forgot. There's one thing I actually worry about with this bracket and the prize pool and the Smash Summit invites. And when I say this, I'm just a little bit nervous because Full Bloom is a grassroots event, and unlike GTX, which had a giant prize pot, the value of a Smash Summit slot greatly exceeds very likely what first place gets. And so I'm not saying Honeybox or Leffen would do this, but let's say in winter semis, like Honeybox or Leffen were like, hey, if you pay me whatever first place gets plus $1,000, I will throw the match to you so you get the summit slot, because if you win the winner semis match against one of them and you're guaranteed third place, which pretty much gives you a shoo-in to get a summit slot. So there is that possibility that could happen. I'm not saying it will, where somebody forfeits or throws a match because the prize pool of Full Bloom is so low. So I'm hoping that there's some sort of rule set or ruling that says that if they suspect you of collusion, that you are banned from Summit, or there's some sort of ramification. That's the one thing I'm nervous about, because I can't imagine the Full Bloom pot first place being more than $4,000, maybe $5,000. Even then, I think that's a little bit high. And the value of a summit slot's probably at least 10 to 20 grand, if we were to be perfectly honest. So overall, I'm excited. I'm really have to give props to Summit for supporting grassroots events. I really love it when I guess the larger companies or bigger tournaments with bigger budgets, partner with the smaller events, because grassroots is really important to the Melee scene, and I'm glad that they respect and they are supporting the grassroots scene. So those are my thoughts on Smash Summit Full Bloom and who I think are going to make it in. TLDR, I think the three strongest candidates are SFET, Crush, and AMSA. I think SUJ, Shroomed, and Duck also have decent chances, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, because they're going to be trying really hard, and we're going to get a lot of great matches.